Hey guys, this is Sam, and today I'm going to show you how to blur out the background of an image. So when you want to have the subject that is really in focus, but the background all blurred out, as you often see with high quality DSLR pictures, well, there's a really simple way you can do that in Photoshop. So here, for example, we have the picture of Johnny Depp, which is our subject, and he's really in focus, and you can see the background is all blurred out, so it looks really nice. Chances are if you have a lower end camera, like a point and shoot camera, compact cameras, chances are you will not be able to get that kind of effect. But no worries, because if you do have Photoshop, there's once again a simple way you can achieve that kind of result. So we have a second picture here where Johnny Depp is still in focus, but the background is not as blurred out perhaps as we would like it to be. Okay, so to achieve this kind of result where we will just blur out the background and not the subject, you have to follow 5 simple steps. Okay, so step number 1 is to copy your background layer, because we don't want to work on the layer itself, the picture itself. We want to work on a copy. Step number 2 is to make a selection on the main subject that you want in focus using the quick select tool. Don't worry, we'll go through the steps together through Photoshop. Step number 3 is to refine the edges of your selection, because the problem with quick select tool is that often the edges aren't the best. Step number 4 is to inverse your selection, because by now what we had done was to select the subject that we want in focus. In this case it's Johnny Depp, but we want to have the background blurred out, not the subject. So all what we have to do is inverse our selection, and our last step is to go to our filter menu and apply the amount of blur that suits our need with the lens blur function. Alright, so let's go back to Photoshop, and we'll apply step number 1 right now. Simply right click on your background layer and click on duplicate layer. Once you're done, you can rename the duplicated layer whichever name you want. Here I'll just name it blur. Click OK, and you can see here we have the background and the blur layer. These are both the same images, just a copy. Once you're done with that, you want to select the quick select tool in your panel, in the left hand side panel. So here you can see we have move tool, rectangular marquee tool, and so on. You want to have the quick select tool chosen. And what a quick select tool allows you to do is to quickly build up a selection around a subject. It's really quick. It's an efficient way to work with Photoshop when you want to have a particular selection on a subject. But once again, the problem is that the edges are sometimes not the best. So that's why we'll refine the edges once we're done with our selection. Okay, so the way this works, you're just going to click and drag on your subject. Okay, so you click, left click, and you keep your finger on the mouse, okay, and you're just going to drag around the subject. Okay, so quickly drag here. I'm going to choose, okay, here, you want this pocket. So you can see how it's working. It's really selecting Johnny Depp, and Photoshop is smart enough to see that what we want is this particular area and not the background. Sometimes if your subject is of a similar color as your background, let's say you're wearing a white shirt and the background is all white, well, it's going to be rather hard to make a selection. But if you want to study about making selections, feel free to look at some of my other videos. Okay, now you can see that I did select some areas outside of the subject. We're going to zoom in a little bit here. So for example, you see here some parts of the palm trees have been selected. Well, there's a really easy way we can deselect that. So you go back into your quick select tool, and if you look at the top here, you have subtract from selection. So you can simply click on that and simply deselect. Once again, by clicking and dragging. So we don't want to have this area selected. Okay, simply hold on the space bar key if you want to quickly move around. Okay, and here I want to add this selection. Going back to add selection, let's choose this and this. Okay, this looks pretty good. Okay, now time to deselect this. Now a good thing is to know the shortcuts for the subtract selection tool. So it's simply Alt. So if you hold on to Alt, this will change into a minus, and then you can simply click and drag to subtract your selection. Okay, so this looks pretty decent. Let's zoom back out. So this looks good. I'm happy with that. So step number 3 is to refine our edges. Go back into your quick select tool, click on refine edge here at the top, right below the help menu. And as you can see, the selection is good. Our subject, which is in white here, just to show us how it works, it's good, but the edges are rough. It's not that neat. So a good way to quickly fix that is to, in your refine edge menu, go into adjust edge, and you want to adjust the smoothness and the contrast. So I'll just open this up a little bit. Looks much better here, and the contrast a little bit more. Okay, this looks pretty good. So here I have a smooth at 14, contrast at 28. So look at the before and the after. So now that's a really nice selection that we've got here. Once you're happy with what you have, click OK. Step number 4 is to inverse our selection, because now we've got the subject, Johnny Depp, selected, but that's not what we want to blur. We want to blur the whole background. So we want to blur everything except for Johnny Depp. So you right click on your image and select inverse. So now our background is selected, not Johnny Depp. Okay, so our last step is to go into our filter menu. You choose blur, lens blur. You want to make sure you have lens blur. You don't want to have any other type of blur for this particular edit that we're doing here. And with the radius, you can play and this will blur out the background. So if you see here, I've already got the radius as 18. If I put it back to 0, this is our before. If I put it back to 18, just going to type 18. And this looks pretty good. Now you can play with the radius if you want to have it higher for more blur, or lower for less blur. That's up to you. So really it's up to your preference. If you really want to have a blurry background, go ahead and crank this up. Otherwise, if you want to have a more subtle effect, usually a radius around 5 or 10 will be your best bet. Okay, so I'm happy with a radius of around, let's say 14. That looks pretty good to me. I'm going to click OK. And to deselect everything, because now it's still selected, you simply click, use Control D. Here you go. So if you check out the before and the after, we've got here our background, which is blurred out. Looks really good. And I'm happy with that. It looks pretty good. Now I did this selection very quickly, just for instructional purposes, sorry. If you're doing it on your own picture, spend a great deal of time making a really nice and neat selection. So you really want to make sure that your selection is perfect. Now if I'm zooming in a little bit here, I can see that I did it a little bit choppily. You can see this part here was not done really well. So once again, I did it very quickly just to show you how it's done. But if you're working on your own pictures, spend a good deal of time making a great selection, then go ahead and refine your edges, inverse the selection, and then you can apply the necessary filter that you want. Alright guys, I hope this was helpful to you, and don't forget to check out my other videos.